The silent arrival. The deep void of space was eerily quiet, save for the soft hum of distant celestial bodies. Yet beneath the calm, something immense and menacing was lurking. Without warning, a fleet of alien warships emerged from the blackness, breaking the silence with their arrival. These ships, called the Orlani, were ancient warriors from a star system beyond the reach of human exploration. Their craft, gleaming silver with jagged crystalline edges, seemed to shimmer as they sliced through space, casting long shadows across the stars. On the bridge of the lead vessel, the Infinite Horizon, Admiral Vexar stood in front of a massive viewport, observing the small blue planet below. He was a towering figure, with skin like polished stone and eyes that glowed faintly with an internal light. His species, the Orlani, were known throughout the galaxy as conquerors, merciless, and unyielding in their quest for domination. Yet there was something about Earth that intrigued him. It wasn't the technology of the humans, primitive and crude, nor their scattered history of conflict. It was the resilience that pulsed in every corner of their world, something the Orlani had yet to fully understand. "Admiral, the preliminary scans are complete," reported Commander Lyra, his second in command. She was a sharp-minded strategist, her long silver hair flowing like liquid metal, and her eyes scanned the readouts with precision. "This planet is more vulnerable than we thought. Their weapons are outdated, and their infrastructure is fragile. The humans are still dependent on fossil fuels for energy. They have barely begun to explore their own moon." Vexar's lips curled into a faint smile, the kind that showed his jagged crystalline teeth. "It will be easy, then. Prepare the neural dampeners. Let us see if these primitive creatures can withstand the power of the Orlani." He turned away from the viewport, his gaze now cold and calculating. The Orlani had never failed to conquer a world, and Earth would be no exception. The fleet began its descent, cloaked in invisibility, carefully positioning themselves above major cities. The humans below remained unaware, going about their daily lives, oblivious to the impending storm. Lyra's voice cut through the stillness. "Admiral, we are ready to deploy the dampeners. Should we proceed?" Vexar paused for a moment, considering. He had seen many civilizations fall before him, their inhabitants dropping like flies under the influence of the Orlani's most feared weapon. The neural dampeners, devices capable of rendering entire populations unconscious by overwhelming their nervous systems with synchronized energy pulses. "Execute," he ordered, his voice laced with authority. The fleet activated their weapons, sending out a wave of energy so powerful that it could blanket entire cities. As the pulses traveled toward Earth, the crew of the Infinite Horizon watched closely, their eyes glued to the monitoring screens, expecting to see the humans fall. But as the energy waves hit, something unexpected happened. The humans didn't fall. Instead, their world seemed to absorb the energy, as if the very fabric of Earth had adapted to the strange forces. The readings on the monitors remained stable. The humans below continued with their activities, unaware of the alien interference above. "This is impossible," Lyra whispered, her voice filled with disbelief. "The neural dampeners have never failed before. How can they be unaffected?" Vexar's expression hardened, and his mandibles clicked together in frustration. He had underestimated the humans. No species had ever resisted the Orlani's mind-altering weapons. Yet these fragile creatures were different. He could sense something was wrong, something ancient and primal stirring in the heart of this world. "Increase the power," he commanded, his voice now tinged with anger. "Target their largest city. New York, we will test them further." The fleet redirected its focus, sending an even stronger pulse toward the massive urban sprawl of New York City. The energy levels surged, enough to bring down an entire civilization. But once again, the humans stood their ground. They looked up at the sky, confused by the strange flickers of light. But otherwise, they did not falter. Vexar's frustration turned to concern. Something deeper was at play here. The Orlani had never faced such resistance. Could the humans be immune to their powers? Impossible. There was no such thing as immunity to the Orlani's weapons. "Admiral, I am detecting an anomaly," said Lyra, her voice trembling with uncertainty. "The human brain waves. They're absorbing our energy. It's like they've evolved to counteract it." Vexor's brow furrowed. "This is no coincidence. It is as if they were born to resist us." The realization hit him like a physical blow. These humans were not the weak, helpless creatures they had assumed them to be. They were something more, something unpredictable. The Orlani had come to conquer, but now they were the ones who found themselves at a disadvantage. "Prepare the molecular disruptors," Vexor ordered, his voice steely. "If we cannot incapacitate their minds, we will destroy their bodies." The Orlani ship switched to their secondary weapon system, firing beams of intense energy designed to destabilize molecular bonds and turn organic matter into dust. The golden beams rained down upon the Earth, hitting the human population directly. But instead of disintegrating the people, something extraordinary happened. The humans seemed to grow stronger. Some even appeared to heal, as if the energy had a restorative effect. "This is madness," Lyra gasped, her fingers flying over the controls. "Their biology is evolving in real time. They're adapting to our attacks faster than we can adjust our weapons." Vexor's mind raced. "We must reconsider. There's more to these humans than we've ever anticipated. They are not just a threat. They are a force of nature." The Orlani fleet hovered in the atmosphere, unable to comprehend the magnitude of what they were facing. For the first time in centuries, they were not the conquerors. They were the ones fighting to survive. The battle for Earth had only just begun. The unexpected resistance. High above Earth, the Vorithian fleet hovered in eerie silence. Admiral Vexor's mind raced, trying to piece together the enigma of what had just occurred. The humans, fragile and seemingly powerless, had turned the Orlani's greatest weapon against them. Their neural dampeners, once a guaranteed method for pacifying entire civilizations, had done nothing to halt the human resistance. In fact, it seemed as if Earth's inhabitants had absorbed the very energy that had been meant to destroy them. On the bridge of the infinite horizon, the tension was palpable. The usual hum of the ship's advanced systems felt distant, drowned out by the weight of disbelief that hung in the air. The crew, known for their stoic composure, exchanged anxious glances. They were all experienced warriors, having witnessed entire worlds fall without so much as a challenge. But this was different. "Admiral," Commander Lyra said, her voice strained, "I've been analyzing the data further. The human minds, whatever we're doing to them, they seem to be adapting. It's as though their nervous systems were designed to counter our energy signatures. But it doesn't make sense." Vexor, his expression grim, slowly turned to face his subordinate. He could see the uncertainty in her eyes, something he had never witnessed from the battle-hardened Orlani warrior. This was the first time in his career that he was faced with an opponent who could adapt faster than his own strategies. "It's not possible," Vexor muttered. "No species can evolve this rapidly. These humans are not. They shouldn't be able to withstand us. But their biology, it's like a defense mechanism that evolves in real time." Lyra's eyes widened as she scrolled through more data. "They're even starting to develop technology that mimics our own energy signatures. Just hours after our first attack, they've already begun replicating elements of our weapon systems." Vexor's patience was wearing thin. "Enough. Send in the next phase of the plan. Prepare the full assault." Below, on Earth's surface, the scene was unfolding in a way the Orlani had never anticipated. Cities like New York, Tokyo, and London buzzed with a new energy. The human population, initially confused by the strange flickers in the sky, had begun to notice that something was different about their world. While many remained unaware of the extraterrestrial threat above, a select few, scientists, military personnel, and tech experts, had begun to connect the dots. Their minds, now strangely attuned to the energy pulses coming from the Orlani ships, had begun to reverse engineer the technology they had been exposed to. Dr. Lena Reyes, a leading physicist from a prestigious lab in New York, stood before her team, eyes wide with astonishment. She held a strange artifact, a fragment of energy emitter that had fallen from one of the Orlani ships during their first wave of assault. It was humming softly, almost as if it were alive. "This is incredible," she whispered, staring at the device in her hands. "It's like a key, unlocking an entirely new level of understanding. These Orlani, they've given us a gift, whether they meant to or not." Her colleague, Lieutenant Marcus Hill, a decorated officer from the United States Army, paced nervously. "Doctor, you can't be serious. These aliens attacked us with weapons that should have wiped us out. And now we're supposed to use their technology to fight back. How do we even know it's safe?" Lena's fingers danced across the device, pulling up holographic blueprints on a nearby terminal. "I don't think we have a choice anymore. We're not just adapting to their attacks. We're beginning to control them. Look at this," she said, showing Marcus the display. "These neural dampeners, they're powered by a quantum energy source. I believe we can reverse engineer it and make our own versions. We can use their power against them." Marcus shook his head, still incredulous. "Are you saying we're going to fight aliens with their own weapons? What if we're wrong? What if we trigger something even worse?" Lena's expression softened. "We've been backed into a corner. We either fight back or we let them crush us, and I think we've just found a way to survive." Back in the atmosphere, the Orlani fleet was preparing to launch their secondary assault, molecular disruptors that would disintegrate anything organic with a single burst of energy. Vexar knew the humans had to be stopped before they could build any real resistance. He ordered the fleet to increase power, bringing the molecular disruptors to full capacity. But something was different this time. As the golden beams shot toward the Earth's surface, they struck the humans not with devastation, but with an odd reaction. Rather than crumbling, the beams seemed to fuel the humans, as if the energy was absorbed and channeled into something greater. A strange, almost unearthly energy radiated from the ground, and a faint pulse of light returned to the Orlani ships. "This cannot be," Vexar growled, his voice laced with disbelief. "They're turning our energy into their own strength." Lara looked at the monitors, her brow furrowed in confusion. "Admiral, this is unprecedented. The humans are adapting their bodies and minds to our attacks. They're even using the energy to enhance their own technology. We need to retreat, or they'll have countermeasures ready in minutes." Vexar slammed his fist into the console, his fury palpable. "No retreat. No surrender. We will not be defeated by these creatures." His eyes burned with an intense determination. "Deploy the next wave of attacks. Focus everything on the major human cities. If we can't destroy them, we'll burn their will to fight. We'll break them down until they have nothing left." But even as he spoke, he knew that something fundamental had changed. The Orlani were not the hunters anymore. They were now the hunted. The humans, those weak, fragile beings, had shown a resilience that Vexar could not have predicted. And in the midst of the Orlani's greatest offensive, they had begun to push back. The war for Earth had taken an unexpected turn, and no one, not even the mighty Orlani, could foresee where it would lead. The spark of defiance. As the Orlani fleet loomed high above Earth, cloaked in their overwhelming technological might, the battle for the planet had shifted. The invaders, accustomed to swift and unyielding victories, now found themselves locked in a tense standoff with an enemy they had underestimated: humans. The resilient creatures had proven themselves more than just survivors. They were adapting at an extraordinary rate, using the very weapons meant to subjugate them against their creators. Admiral Vexar stood at the helm of the infinite horizon, a towering figure cloaked in armored brilliance. His crystal-like eyes narrowed in concentration as he reviewed the reports streaming in from every corner of Earth. The humans were not just resisting. They were fighting back. They had begun harnessing the very energy the Orlani had used to assault them. turning their once helpless state into a foundation for resistance. Lyra, his ever-loyal second-in-command, was analyzing the data with a focused intensity. The human response had been far more than just a tactical surprise. It was a strategic revolution. Admiral, their technology. It's evolving faster than we can track. They've started building machines that mimic our molecular disruptors. And their weapons, our weapons, are being deployed with alarming efficiency. The humans have already developed countermeasures to neutralize our assaults. Vexar's mandibles clicked in frustration. "This is not possible," he muttered under his breath. The Orlani were not just a species. They were an empire built on the art of war. Their technology had shattered civilizations, yet these humans were now turning that technology against them. He knew it was no longer a question of simply overpowering them. The humans were tapping into something far more powerful. "Increase the power to the disruptors," he ordered. "We will show them the true might of the Orlani. This planet will bend to our will." But as the orders were relayed across the fleet, something remarkable was happening below. In the human cities, life had taken a turn from fear to defiance. The attack from above had sparked something deep within Earth's inhabitants, a desire to not only survive, but to rise up. In the heart of New York City, amidst the chaos of a world on the brink of collapse, a group of humans had come together. These were not the ordinary citizens trying to survive in the face of overwhelming power. These were the innovators, the dreamers, the engineers, and the fighters. Led by Dr. Lena Reyes and Lieutenant Marcus Hill, they had started to understand the alien technology they had once feared and now used it to rebuild their world's defenses. Lena stood before a makeshift lab in an underground bunker, eyes glued to a holographic map of the city. The data from the Orlani's attacks had been decrypted and analyzed. What had once seemed like an insurmountable obstacle was now a blueprint for humanity's survival. "We've adapted faster than they could ever have anticipated," Lena said, her voice laced with determination. "We've broken their code, the neural dampeners they sent. It's not just a weapon, it's a frequency. It disrupts the neural balance of every living thing. But what if we could tune it? What if we could reverse the frequency and weaponize it against them?" Marcus paced nervously, rubbing his hand across his jaw. "You're talking about taking their weapon and turning it on them. That's dangerous, Lena. We don't know enough to pull this off." Lena looked at him, her eyes filled with purpose. "Marcus, we're not just fighting for survival anymore. We're fighting to reclaim our world. The Orlani thought they could crush us in a matter of hours, but we've turned their weapons into a tool for humanity's resurgence. They'll never see us coming." With that, Lena turned to the screen in front of her. She had cracked the frequency code. She began inputting the data into the central processor, creating a new device, a counter-weapon that would target the Orlani's neural dampeners and render their most devastating weapon useless. The device would send out a pulse that would override the Orlani's technology, sending their own weaponry back at them in a cascade of destruction. "We just need to launch it," Lena said, finalizing the calculations. Marcus nodded, albeit with a sense of dread. "And if we fail?" Lena didn't answer immediately. She just stared at the screen, her thoughts churning. There was no room for failure. Not this time. The Orlani's next strike would be even more intense, and they had no idea how much time they had left. As Lena and Marcus prepared their makeshift weapon, the human forces around the world were mobilizing. Resistance cells, scattered throughout major cities, were beginning to piece together their own efforts. A sense of unity, born from the unthinkable, began to form. The humans had nothing but their wits, their courage, and an unwavering determination to protect their planet. But it was more than that. They had begun to embrace their ingenuity. They were no longer just reacting to the Orlani threat. They were becoming the architects of their own future. Meanwhile, in the cold void above, Vexar and the Orlani fleet launched their final offensive. The molecular disruptors came online, and a barrage of golden beams shot down toward Earth's surface, targeted at key human population centers. The beams burned through the atmosphere, creating blinding streaks of light as they reached their targets. The devastation was immense. Buildings crumbled, and fires raged across the cities below. It seemed as though the humans had no chance. But as the Orlani watched with satisfaction, something strange happened. The beams they had fired, once destructive, seemed to ripple and flicker as if they were losing their strength. A pulse of energy, like a shockwave, shot outward from Earth's surface, striking the Orlani ships with a force they had not anticipated. The beam's energy was redirected back at them, destabilizing their weapons and forcing them to retreat in shock. "This cannot be," Vexar shouted, his eyes burning with rage as he looked at the swirling energy on his screens. "They turned the molecular disruptors against us." The pulse of energy was the key. The humans had succeeded. They had turned the tide, not with brute force or sheer power, but with their intellect and their will to survive. What was once thought to be a hopeless battle had now become a fight where the humans were the ones on the offense. The Orlani had underestimated them. And now, the humans had something they had never had before: hope. The war was far from over, but the spark of defiance had been lit, and there was no turning back. The echo of resistance. The Orlani fleet continued to hover in high orbit, their warships casting long, dark shadows over Earth. Above, the heavens were silent, but beneath that stillness, the planet itself was alive with the pulse of defiance. In the wake of the unexpected energy pulse that had struck back against them, the Orlani were reeling. For the first time since they had begun their conquest of countless worlds, they faced an enemy whose ingenuity and resilience defied everything they had ever known. Admiral Vexar paced the command deck of the Infinite Horizon, his mind racing. His empire, vast and unstoppable, had encountered rebellions, but nothing like this. The humans were not only surviving, they were evolving, adapting at a pace that was unfathomable. What had once seemed like an easy victory was quickly spiraling into something much more dangerous. Lyra, his ever-loyal second-in-command, stood beside him, watching the monitor screens with growing unease. "Admiral, we've detected another anomaly. The humans have deployed a counteroffensive. They've launched an energy pulse that neutralized our disruptor beams. Our weapons are losing their effectiveness. They've even begun to adapt our technology and use it against us. They're no longer the fragile species we thought them to be." Vexar's mandibles clicked in frustration. "This can't be happening. We are the Orlani. We don't fail. Not like this." Yet, the truth was undeniable. The humans had done the unthinkable. They had turned the very weapons meant to annihilate them into tools of resistance. They had not only repurposed the Orlani's molecular disruptors, but had now begun to integrate their own weapons, mirroring the advanced technology of the invaders with an efficiency that was nothing short of remarkable. On Earth, the humans had begun to regroup. What had started as a desperate scramble for survival was now a coordinated global effort. The pulse that had repelled the Orlani disruptors was the spark that ignited the flames of rebellion. In underground bunkers, makeshift laboratories, and command centers, humanity's greatest minds were working furiously, building weapons, defenses, and strategies that once seemed impossible. Dr. Lena Reyes, the physicist who had been at the forefront of the initial human response, stood in front of a new device, a hybrid weapon designed to turn the tide of battle in their favor. With her hands pressed against the controls of the device, her mind raced with possibilities. She knew this was a turning point. The Orlani had given them the key to defeating them, but it was up to the humans to wield it. "Marcus," Lena called out, her voice filled with urgency. "We've cracked their energy code. We can now manipulate their molecular disruptor frequencies and rechannel them into offensive pulses. If we can amplify this technology, we can target their ships directly. We can take the fight to them." Marcus Hill, still adjusting to the shock of what had happened, stepped forward, his face set in grim determination. "You're saying we can turn their weapons against them, on a planetary scale?" "Exactly," Lena replied, her fingers flying over the control panel. "We can use their own energy to destabilize their ships. But we need to act quickly. The Orlani will adapt to this too. If we don't strike soon, they'll find a way to neutralize it. Marcus nodded. Then let's make sure we hit them hard. We're not just fighting for survival anymore. We're fighting to win. Lena's eyes flicked to the terminal beside her, and a blue holographic map of the Orlani fleet materialized. They had only one chance to strike while the invaders were still reeling. Earth's remaining military forces were ready, but the humans had learned that victory would not come through sheer force alone. They had to be clever, quick, and precise. Their most powerful weapon wasn't the machines they had created, but the mind behind them, the ingenuity that had sparked their resistance. Back in space, the Orlani were preparing for another assault, but now there was a shift in the way they approached the war. The humans' surprising resilience had disrupted Vexar's once confident plans. The admiral stood before a massive strategic display, his mind turning over new tactics. His fleet was powerful, but these humans, these unexpected adversaries, were proving to be a different breed of enemy. "Prepare the anti-energy shields," Vexar commanded coldly. "We will contain their weapons. We will not be caught off guard again." But the Orlani were underestimating the speed at which the humans were evolving. With each new countermeasure, the humans adapted, learning and perfecting. In the darkness of space, a subtle shift was happening. The humans were no longer passive. They were becoming the aggressors. And the Orlani were beginning to realize they weren't facing an enemy they could simply crush with overwhelming force. They were up against a force of nature, a species whose resilience, adaptability, and will to survive knew no bounds. Back on Earth, Lena and Marcus were making their final preparations. The hybrid weapon, a culmination of months of desperate research, was now ready for deployment. It was a massive device, capable of sending a pulse strong enough to reach the Orlani ships in orbit and disrupt their molecular structures. But Lena knew that its success would depend on precision and timing. They only had one shot. "We're ready," Lena said, her voice steady despite the chaos surrounding her. "Once we fire this, the Orlani will be forced to retreat. This is it, the final push." Marcus looked at her, his expression serious. "Let's make sure they know they've made a mistake coming here." The weapon's energy systems began to hum as the countdown reached its final moments. Lena's heart pounded in her chest. This was their moment to prove that the human spirit could not be crushed by alien invaders, no matter how advanced or powerful they were. As the weapon fired, a brilliant pulse of energy shot upward, cutting through the sky like a thunderbolt, racing toward the fleet above. The pulse collided with the Orlani ships, and for a moment, the universe seemed to hold its breath. The Orlani ships trembled, their energy shields flickering as the pulse reverberated through their systems. Then, as if in response, a powerful explosion erupted within the heart of the Orlani fleet, the ships disintegrating in a blinding flash of light. The humans had done it. But the battle was far from over. The Orlani would regroup. They always did. However, Earth had taken its first decisive step toward victory. The human spirit, creative, resilient, and defiant, had struck a blow that would echo across the stars. And somewhere, in the deep expanse of space, Vexar realized with a cold certainty that the fight was not yet over. This war had only just begun. The heart of the storm, the aftershocks of the pulse that had ripped through the Orlani fleet still echoed in the void above Earth. The brilliant explosion that had marked the first true victory for humanity had sent shockwaves through the alien warships. For a brief moment, the invaders faltered, unsure of how to react. Their most advanced weapons had been turned against them, and their shields, once considered impenetrable, had failed. Yet, despite this unexpected setback, Admiral Vexar was not a leader who would be easily swayed by a single defeat. His species had conquered countless worlds, and they were far from finished with Earth. The Orlani had faced resistance before, and each time they had emerged victorious. But this was different. The humans, against all odds, had proven that they were not simply prey to be hunted. They were warriors. their minds as sharp as any blade. "Deploy the reinforcements," Vexar ordered, his voice cold and steady, masking the fury that burned inside him. "We will not be stopped by this minor setback. Prepare the fleet for the second phase of the attack. We will scorch their world if necessary, but we will not leave until they are broken." As the Orlani fleet regrouped and prepared for their next wave of destruction, the humans were far from resting on their laurels. Earth's defenses, once weak and disjointed, were now a force to be reckoned with. The success of Lena Rias's hybrid weapon had ignited a new fire within the human race. It was as if a switch had been flipped. And now, humanity was united, not just in survival, but in their drive to take back what was theirs. In the underground labs, military bunkers, and makeshift command centers scattered across the planet, humans were working with tireless determination. The pulse that had struck the Orlani had given them more than just a temporary victory. It had provided them with invaluable data, the key to understanding their enemy on a level they had never thought possible. "We've cracked their communication network," Lena said, her voice filled with urgency as she reviewed the data with Marcus. "The Orlani rely heavily on their command system, but it's not as secure as they thought. If we can hack into their fleet's mainframe, we can cause chaos within their ranks. If we disrupt their orders, they'll be forced to fight in disarray." Marcus nodded, his brow furrowed with determination. "So we hit them where it hurts. But how do we get close enough to do that? Their ships are heavily fortified." Lena paused for a moment, considering the possibilities. "We'll need to create a distraction, something big enough to pull their attention away from the main cities. If we can hack into their fleet's neural networks and plant a virus, we can send them into disarray. But we'll need a team on the ground to deliver the virus directly into their communications center. We're going to need to hit them from both angles." Marcus placed a hand on her shoulder. "Then we'll do it together. The world needs us now more than ever." Across the globe, the call to action went out. Governments, resistance groups, and the united forces of humanity were mobilizing. What had once been disparate pockets of resistance had now formed a single, cohesive effort. There was no time to waste. The Orlani were preparing to bring Earth to its knees, and the humans had only one chance to strike back. Meanwhile, high above, Vexar surveyed the surface of Earth, a sense of grim satisfaction washing over him. His fleet was poised to launch their second wave, an attack unlike any they had ever executed. The Orlani had learned from their initial mistakes, and now they were ready to unleash their full power. Earth would burn, its cities reduced to ashes, and its people crushed beneath the weight of the Orlani war machine. But something nagged at the back of his mind. Despite the overwhelming superiority of the Orlani fleet, the humans had proven to be a wild card. They were unpredictable, resourceful, and resilient in a way that made them dangerous. It was as if their very survival was intertwined with their ability to innovate. For the first time, Vexar found himself questioning the certainty of victory. As the Orlani ships began to prepare for their final bombardment, Lena and Marcus stood at the helm of a new mission, one that could change the course of the war. Their plan was simple yet daring. Infiltrate the heart of the Orlani command network, plant a virus that would disrupt the invaders' communications, and then hit them with the full force of human ingenuity. "We're not just fighting for survival anymore," Lena said as she and Marcus suited up for the mission. "We're fighting to ensure that our future is ours to shape. We're showing them that Earth will never be a conquest, it will be a victory." The two of them, along with a team of the world's most brilliant hackers and military experts, boarded the stealth vessel that would carry them to the heart of the Orlani fleet. The ship was equipped with the latest cloaking technology, designed to evade detection by even the most advanced enemy sensors. As they launched into the sky, the Orlani ships above continued their preparations, unaware that the humans had already begun their next strike. The tension was palpable as Lena and Marcus looked out from the cockpit, their eyes focused on the fleet ahead. This mission would be their most dangerous yet, but it was their only chance to turn the tide once and for all. "All systems are green," the pilot said. his voice steady. "We're on course." Lena took a deep breath, her mind focused on the task ahead. "Let's make this count." As the small vessel neared the Orlani fleet, a sense of anticipation hung in the air. This was the moment humanity had been building toward. The moment when the tide would shift, when Earth's last stand would become the first strike in a war for the future of the galaxy. The humans had no choice but to succeed. And as the final wave of the Orlani fleet began its descent toward Earth, the spark of resistance that had started on the ground now surged through the skies, ready to ignite a battle for the ages. This time, the humans would not be caught off guard. They were not just fighting to survive. They were fighting to win. The edge of oblivion. The silence of space was unnerving, a quiet that hung heavy like the calm before a storm. Above Earth, the Orlani fleet had gathered, its dark silhouette stark against the shimmering stars. Admiral Vexar stood in the command center of the infinite horizon, his mind sharp, his thoughts racing. Despite the losses, despite the unforeseen turn of events, the Orlani were ready to finish what they had started. This planet would burn. But as the fleet began its final preparations for a devastating attack on Earth, something else was unfolding on the surface. Something that would not only challenge the Orlani's might, but shatter the very foundation of their understanding of warfare. In the heart of the human resistance, Dr. Lena Reyes and Lieutenant Marcus Hill were preparing for the most dangerous mission they had ever faced. Their stealth vessel, equipped with the latest technology, was ready to infiltrate the heart of the Orlani fleet, right into the center of their communications network. If they succeeded, they would cripple the entire invasion force. If they failed, Earth would not survive. "Once we plant this virus into their central hub, we'll have the element of surprise," Lena said, her voice calm but steady, betraying the weight of the mission. "We disrupt their command structure, and the rest of their forces will fall into chaos. But we need to be in and out before they can lock down their systems. It's our only chance." Marcus glanced over at her, his expression hard, but filled with determination. "We've been up against the impossible since day one. This is just the next step. We'll make it work. We don't have a choice." The world outside their vessel seemed impossibly vast and silent, the Earth below glowing with life, unaware of the imminent threat. Yet, within the tight walls of the ship, the air crackled with anticipation. Humanity had come together in the face of annihilation, and now, their best and brightest were making the final push. The Orlani had underestimated the humans, but they were about to learn the price of that mistake. Meanwhile, above Earth, Vexar's patience was wearing thin. The Orlani had been preparing for this final offensive for weeks, and yet the humans continued to resist. Every move they made seemed to counter his strategies with uncanny precision. What had begun as a swift and sure conquest was now a drawn-out battle for survival. The Admiral clenched his fists. If it had been any other species, they would have been crushed by now. But these humans, they were unlike anything the Orlani had faced. "Prepare the destruction wave," Vexar commanded, his voice filled with cold intent. "Target the largest human population centers. We will break their will to fight by destroying their hearts. This world will be a smoldering husk by the time we're done." The Orlani fleet readied its most destructive weapon, a full-scale planetary bombardment designed to obliterate major cities in a matter of hours. It was a weapon that could tear apart continents, a force of nature that even the most powerful planetary defenses could not withstand. The humans had fought back, yes, but now, the Orlani would show them the true meaning of power. But as the Orlani ships began to align their weapons for the attack, a strange disturbance rippled through their systems. It was subtle at first, a flicker in their energy readings, a brief pause in the synchronization of their weaponry. But it didn't take long for the engineers aboard the Infinite Horizon to recognize the truth. The humans had infiltrated their communication system. Vexar's eyes narrowed. "What is this?" he growled. Lyra, his trusted second-in-command, was already at her console, her fingers flying over the controls. "Admiral, We've been compromised. There's a virus in our network. It's spreading. Fast. Activate the countermeasures, Vexar barked, his calm demeanor beginning to crack. The Orlani fleet's command structure was now in chaos, their systems warping under the force of the virus. The carefully coordinated attack that had been set in motion was now a liability. The humans had disrupted their most powerful asset, their command. Too late, Lyra muttered. It's everywhere. Our fleet is locked in disarray. We can't coordinate the attack. Vexar's eyes blazed with fury. For the first time, the Orlani were not the ones in control. The humans had turned the tables. It wasn't just their weapons or their technology that had thrown the invaders off. It was their ability to learn, adapt, and exploit weaknesses faster than any other species in the galaxy. Regroup, Vexar ordered, his voice barely more than a snarl. We may have been delayed, but we are far from defeated. Prepare for manual override. Initiate the bombardment with the secondary systems. The humans will not outsmart us again. As the Orlani scrambled to regain control on Earth, Lena and Marcus were preparing to make their final move. The virus was working, and the Orlani fleet was in disarray. Their systems were in freefall, and the chaos had spread across their ranks. But the humans weren't just relying on the virus. They were now ready to make their own strike. Lena turned to Marcus, her face set with grim determination. We've done our part. Now it's up to the rest of humanity. The resistance, coordinated by military leaders and scientists around the world, launched their final offensive. With the Orlani fleet in disarray, the humans took to the skies with their newly designed weapons, tools they had reverse-engineered from the very technology the Orlani had thought would dominate them. Massive human warships, equipped with alien technology, launched a counterattack, their engines roaring as they cut through the atmosphere toward the heart of the Orlani fleet. They fired their newly designed weapons with precision, sending powerful pulses of energy into the heart of the alien armada. The Orlani were not prepared for this onslaught. Their defenses, already weakened from the virus, were quickly overwhelmed by the intensity of the human counteroffensive. Vexar stood on the bridge of the infinite horizon, watching in disbelief as his fleet was torn apart. The humans had done the unthinkable. They had turned the Orlani's greatest strength into their greatest weakness. As the Orlani ships exploded one by one, Vexar knew that Earth would not fall today. But the Orlani were not defeated yet. They would regroup. They would rebuild. The war was far from over. However, for now, Earth had won. The humans had proven that, no matter the odds, they could fight, adapt, and overcome. And as the dust settled across the skies, it became clear to both sides. This was only the beginning of a war that would echo across the stars for generations to come.